Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, and this is our 350th episode for the Midweek Roundup. Very proud to have reached this milestone and humbled by the feedback I've received from colleagues around the world who've caught us on repeat or on the odd occasion catch us live, sharing how much these kind of conversations help them develop some strategies for how to change and implement some new things for their own institutions regarding international education. So, as we do each week, we answer three questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days, and we go in depth, more than just the hot takes that you get when you read a social media post, but that we take the time to go next level. We look at the news stories that come out in our newsletter on Mondays each week, and we see which kinds of questions we can see, common themes we see developing in the news stories, to then go next level with these discussions here on Wednesday afternoon. And as we do, I've mentioned we have our newsletter that which we send out on Monday morning, and that newsletter is available in two formats, either via email at Monday at about 9 a.m. Eastern, or via LinkedIn notifications, where you'll get that around 8:30, about a half hour early. And that comes in Monday morning Eastern Time. We too make an effort to cover four main topic areas each week. First up, a social media section that can cover everything from how social media tools are being used in international education to upcoming webinars, how AI is being used, all sorts of different opportunities to talk about digital reports, online blogs that folks have contributed to the greater discussion related to social media and how we recruit students, how we do international education. We then have a U.S. Central Roundup that covers the big picture questions in the United States, new executive orders, new pieces of legislation, new reports or trends or data that's released. We'll cover that in that section. Then have a Solution Central. And the Solution Central is really meant to examine some success stories out there or some promising ideas that people are floating to potentially address certain challenges we have in our field. And goodness knows we have our fair share the last couple of years. And then we have a global roundup. And the global roundup is important because it's, as much as we are involved and obsessed with our students and making sure that they're successful and prepared and are able to navigate a very complex immigration system to even get here after they're admitted, we want to make sure we spend time looking at the bigger picture. What's going on in the rest of the world related to what we do, international education. We know at the end of May we're going to be having our annual NAFSA conference that brings together 7, 8, 9, 10,000 people from 70 countries plus every year. This year in Orlando, numbers might be down a little bit because of all the travel issues that people are facing, and we'll see who actually is able to show up. But I know for sure there'll be some soul searching, some very in-depth conversations, and many receptions where that will go long into the night or early morning to kibitz about our shared challenges of the day. So I do want to share a special thank you to all those that have subscribed to the newsletter, because that has over now 3,000 subscribers in the international ed community that are getting that content every week. So very proud that I'm able to share what we're doing in the newsletter, what we're doing here on the Roundup. We now have over 5,800 downloads of the Roundup podcasts. So very proud of what strides we're making in helping to inform our international ed colleagues. So thank you for being a part of the conversation. So let's get to our three questions of the day. And first up, what does successful international student recruitment look like today? And it's a very important question because we all know how challenging it is with the various issues we face from a U.S. Perspective in terms of the visa situation, the politics that have been front and center in the news over the last 15 months or so with the Trump administration 2.0, all the various policy decisions they've made that have significantly impacted our ability to do what we do and our students' ability to navigate very complex questions. For those that are here and trying to finish their degrees, go on to work with OPT, potentially H-1B, or those that are still looking to come and start their degrees. So each of those challenges we face presents some very interesting opportunities. So it's an easy way to say that. But when the rubber hits the road in terms of generating that initial interest and the kinds of tactics and opportunities related to travel or digital recruitment that are really changing and will continue to change the more we move forward with technology's implications and how we do what we do, but also the impact of on budgets when big dollar fairs that we used to attend may not be nearly as productive anymore for various reasons. And I think what this particular topic is talking about comes at looking at what we do related to international student recruitment through a different lens. And part of that is what makes the most effective use of our time when we do travel. And then on the other side of it, what are the things we can be doing from a strategic level to really improve how we do what we do. On the travel piece, my good friend Greg Hulls has his regular blog, a weekly blog that he puts out. A lot of it's travel related and tech related, AI related, how he uses it in his field at University of Central Missouri. This past week's topic was one that resonates with me, as I still do a lot of international student recruitment travel, and that was related to what makes a successful trip nowadays, an event, and more, and I've certainly felt this as well over the last 3 years, the big recruitment fairs are much less impactful. And certainly students are very savvy these days. They're getting information about available institutions online. They're using AI to do their college search in some places that can circumvent all your good efforts on the ground. And what makes most sense, I think for me, since I'm a one-person recruitment office, I don't have time to do, and certainly budget to do, all the big events. So when I go places, particularly when I'm working with our partners, and I'm very fortunate at the University of Akron, we work with a company called InUni. They are our global recruitment partner. We work with them. All my trips that I do now involve InUni in fairly heavy doses. Previous trip last month was an around the world trip to Vietnam, India, and then France for a conference that they were putting on through their parent company, Gus. And everywhere I went, particularly in India and Vietnam, the events that, hello, Miss Ha, good to see you online, and all the events that we did, particularly within Uni, it was influencer type of events. So it's train the trainer kind of events. It's working with our in-country rep, taking me to agency partners that they've been working with already, potentially meeting students who've already applied or already are about to apply, and doing very focused meetings and really spreading the word about the institution. I also did a series of presentations at universities in India where I would talk to groups of 200-300 students about our engineering programs, about the process of applying, about STEM OPT, all the different things that could be attractive to them if they choose to apply to our institution. So these kinds of tools and effective tactics that we're able to implement were not just me meeting in a big fair where it's whoever comes by the table, you have a job to try and convince them that you're a good school for them. It's an opportunity to have more targeted, more focused conversations with people who are influencers in the market, are the counselors at schools, are the agents that have students coming to them where they know if they have students who are interested in particular fields of study that you offer, you have scholarships, you have low tuition rates, and you offer a full suite of services for international students, you can be particularly attractive and effective in a lot of different places around the world if you have the kind of support on the ground to make that happen. Like I said, we're very fortunate that we have the partner that we do within Uni, and they're really my eyes and ears on the ground. They are there in 15, 16, 17 different, 18, 20 different countries doing recruitment events on a regular basis. And they're meeting with students and they're having the conversations, oftentimes in the native language with these students that I'm not able to have in all the places that I do go. So we have a much broader reach than I could ever do by myself. And that means that's something we did intentionally because we know we don't have the institutional resources to commit in terms of staff time and budget for multiple people to be doing this every year. And some institutions have that luxury because they've been doing it a while. They've built up a reservoir of goodwill and certainly proof in the pudding in terms of financial results for the institution by their recruitment efforts. We're not there yet with Akron to be able to ramp up significantly in staff, but we have a plan in place in the next few years to hopefully grow our staff and grow our international operations to be much more comprehensive. So for us right now, it's how I'm able to operate in my environment at my institution in the global picture with the right partners. I'm able to do much more targeted, much more impactful travel, and that can have bottom line results for us on the recruitment front. So, for example, I'm leaving tomorrow for 10 days to Brazil. A lot of different things are happening during this meeting, during this trip. When I arrive, I'll be doing a partner visit with SMIE in Florianopolis, the host city for FOBI, the Brazilian version of NAFSA, where prior to the conference, in the host city, our partner, SMIE, who I've known for about 3 or 4 years now, actually started a relationship with them back at UNLV and started that relationship again with the same people when I moved to Akron in January of last year. And now our mechanical engineering department has been working closely with them on some research opportunities, some potential papers and conference presentations down the road in their field. And I'm helping that relationship grow with my presence on their campus, meeting with their staff. A couple of their staff have already visited our campus, and now I'm visiting theirs. And that is how you build these kind of consistent relationships and have some conversations from a student recruitment perspective about ways that some of their undergraduate programs for graduates can be potential pipelines for our grad programs. So there's things that I'm doing. That's the first two things, the SMIE visit, then the FOBI conference, where I'll be meeting with other Brazilian universities who are looking to internationalize, looking for partners abroad. And through a couple of connections a friend has made, who will also be at the conference from another U.S. school, we'll be able to have additional in-depth conversations with them, with these other Brazilian universities that could be potential partners for us. After that conference finishes, I'll be picking up with our in-uni team, working with the person who's actually based in Florianopolis, who operates across Brazil. But she and I will be doing visits, some programming on the day after the conference. Then we'll be going to Sao Paulo for a couple days. We'll be doing some visits there, as well as a meeting with 5 admitted students for the fall from Brazil, who all happen to live in Sao Paulo. That I'll be having a coffee, couple hours break where they can come in, bring their parents in, have a chance to meet and talk to me, get some swag, and get ready for hopefully successful visa appointments, and convince them that Akron will be a great place for them to join. So we are taking full advantage of all the time that I have. We're touching a few different opportunities and connections that will help grow our footprint internationally, that develop our relationships with particular partners. We're also going to be having some connections with partners. One of our service providers, Plati, based in Brazil. We'll be having a couple different meetings with them, one in Florianopolis, one in Sao Paulo with the owner and founder, Maurizio. Segura, and they're doing a particular project with us that we're working in Vietnam and Indonesia in an inquiry generation campaign through social media, a landing page, and then also using AI as a way to vet interests by having an AI calling agent get in touch with these students via WhatsApp or Zalo Talk for the students in Vietnam and Indonesia, and then following up and eventually having a call with them, an AI call with them, to see what kind of interest they have and to gauge their level of interest and whether they're ready to go to the next level, and perhaps talk to one of our in-uni team members on the ground in Southeast Asia to help them through the process. And that's a unique connection where we're hoping to see some real results through this initiative this year with the AI calling and the partnership with Platy and in-uni both are working for us to generate student applications, student enrollments, and that's something we're doing very differently than we ever would have done before. But that's also part of this trip to Brazil next week, or starting tomorrow. So successful recruitment on the ground in terms of how you do things now is changing, and I think is changing where it needs to be much more focused, much more targeted. What is also changing is on a much broader scale are the kinds of opportunities that institutions have to think more strategically with regard to the kinds of opportunities that might be certainly a change in direction in terms of how you recruit. There's another LinkedIn newsletter that I follow regularly called Uni Newsletter. There was a brief this past week that touched on some very important topics and focused on different ways universities can be better reaching students, better making inroads in certain countries, and talking about that localization goes beyond just different translation of your content, that thinking much more strategically about where you do your travel. And that's something I really, there's about 7 or 8 different things that they mention in the article that I think are well worth listening to and reading to see what the real opportunities might be to adjust, because static strategic plans are never long-term effective. You need to have flexibility built in, review periods built into what you're trying to do, and this is part of what we really emphasize at the University of Akron. Is we need to have our ears to the ground and listen to what's happening from our partners who are in market, who can really tell us, okay, we're seeing a shift, that we need to potentially be looking at adding small nominal $1,000 to $3,000 graduate scholarships for applicants, for top students, as a way to also address issues in certain countries that we see where for postgraduate students or students coming for master's degrees, when they're at visa appointments at some countries, they're going, why don't you have any funding from your institution that you're going to? And as if it's supposed to be an expectation that they have funding, when that's never really been something we've heard, but we're starting to hear that in market from visa officers or from students who are gone for appointments, and these are the questions that they were laying back to us that are asked. So the dynamics are changing all the time, and having a very rigid policy or approach to recruitment and to markets in terms of application process, in terms of all the different elements that go into a successful strategy, is certainly probably very, very much an uphill battle that can feel probably quite Sisyphean. Did I say that right? Pushing that boulder up the hill. But anyway, and doing the same thing every day, it gets harder and harder. But it's an evolving landscape, and we need to adapt with the times. And certainly those that do are certainly putting their best foot forward in terms of giving their institution and their efforts the best chance for success. Now, next question. Are travel bans permanent? And actually, this came up. The news story that was in our newsletter this week was related out of Nigeria. Obviously, it's well known that Nigeria, top sending African nation to the United States, was put on the travel ban list. One of 20 countries in Africa, one of over 40 around the world, that international students can now not enter the United States on visas, student visas. It's just part of the ban. Why have these bans popped up? This is what often gets lost in the shuffle. In most every case, there are a combination of elements, but it's usually visa overstay rates, and then also, in most cases, information sharing between governments. This is particularly the case in Nigeria, where we have asked, in order to continue to grant visas to Nigerians looking to come to the United States on non-immigrant visas, we have asked for information sharing so that we are able to know that from applicants who are applying to us whether they have any of those, and whether it's a business visa, tourist visa, student visa. Our government and the consular officers that are doing the interviews every day, need to find out if there are known criminals in their country, or have a criminal record in that country that they're applying from. Because we have, as if you haven't been able to guess, this administration has a much stricter view of security, national security, and not letting in people to the United States who mean us harm or do not have the best, most honorable intentions of coming to the United States. Anything less than coming for intended purposes is seen as potentially a danger. And that's the reality of this administration. And they've made clear with the countries that are now on this ban list, this 40 country strong list, that hey, if you make changes to your information sharing with us and security arrangements we have, it is very possible to get off the travel ban list. So it's not meant to be a permanent thing, but we know that there was a proposed list of probably 60 countries, well, the initial 20, but probably 40 more countries that were on a list that included several countries in Africa that have since gotten off that list, but one in particular, Ghana, was on that proposed ban list last year, and then when the actual travel bans were introduced in December, they got off that list. You may recall that there was a reduction in the visa duration awarded for most of these countries anyway, reduced from whatever the reciprocal agreement might have been between the U.S. and that country, was reduced to single entry, 3-month maximum duration, which means any student that actually comes to us from those countries on that reduced length visa would have to renew their visa every time they left the country for reentry. So that's obviously a way to ensure that they stay in the country until they're done with the program, basically, because no student is really going to want to have to do that on a regular basis from those affected countries. It's not every country, but from the ones that were on the potential ban list. One of those countries initially was Ghana, but then they met the threshold that the U.S. government and State Department had set up to be on a reciprocal basis and have the information sharing we needed for local criminal databases to have access to that, to find out if any applicants for visas to the U.S. were on any of those lists. So that is meant to be a very, very, very much the way to get off the list. And when the final list in December was released of which countries were going to be on the ban list, Ghana was no longer on the list because they had met their threshold. Nigeria is on the list, and the article that I posted this past week's newsletter was specific to the Nigeria situation, and I say it's not meant to be permanent, and if the Nigerian government meets our requirements for security purposes, then we can take them off the travel ban list. We do know that there are going to be some exemptions made for Nigerians that might be traveling to the U.S. for sporting events like the World Cup or the Olympics in a couple of years. Their special exemptions will be made. But for folks like us at institutions, we want to know that they will have opportunities to continue again to pursue their studies here, and that those security arrangements matter. Got into a little bit of a back and forth with a colleague on LinkedIn last night about this particular issue. He commented on the Nigeria post that I put out, and he goes, "Oh, this is just another example of this government's refusal to to play nice in the international sandbox. But clearly, I made the point, as I'm doing now, that it's based on reciprocal arrangements and information sharing on criminal databases. And he goes, well, are any students coming to the U.S. from Nigeria? Are they terrorists? And that's not the point. The point is it's a standard policy that's applied across the board. There are plenty of countries in the world, in the Middle East, where there are terrorists who have come from those countries in the past, but they're not now, at least the ones that we're giving visas to, because there are those information sharing features built into the visa systems that we have with those countries. So we're able to do that for countries where it's a concern. Nigeria, for those who haven't been paying attention to the news, there are significant issues with terrorism in Nigeria. Boko Haram and the massacres of Christians across the country are seen as terrorist acts by the U.S. government. Certainly, the Nigerian government is saying these are all isolated incidents, and it's actually a subterfuge, because I think they're co-opted by the Islamic extremists in that country. So we'll see if that's why they're currently under the travel ban. They're not playing nice with us to let us vet who properly the folks from that country that want to come to the U.S. So are the travel bans permanent? Well, they are if the countries don't play nice and share information. So I do hold out hope that in Nigeria we can see a change, and the government does provide the information that we'll need as a country to make sure when we review students, tourists, business people for visas, that they are who they say they are, that they're not meaning us harm in any way, before we make a decision on whether to grant them a visa. So right now they can't even apply because their government, home government, is not sharing information. That's the reality of the situation. Will they change? I hope they will, but certainly they're not going to be permanent, those travel bans. Now, the final question of the day is a post-mortem on what's happened in Canada. It's no surprise to most that follow certainly our newsletter over the last 3-4 years. We've certainly seen the rise and fall of Canada. Certainly during the pandemic, they had an incredible rise. And then once the dust settled from the pandemic, the government realized they had a much too open front door for those that were looking to come, not only for study. Study was almost incidental for many of them that were coming, but they were seeing entry into Canada via a study route as a path to residency and eventual work in residency and potentially citizenship. We know the challenges that Canada has with regard to declining birth rates and enrollment and domestic populations declining, that their institutions had become heavily dependent on international students. Somewhere it's 25-30% or more at the top universities. Some private colleges were 90% or more international students, oftentimes mostly from India. We know that folks were coming for vocational degrees in Canada who already had master's degrees. That didn't make a whole lot of sense, and certainly from an immigration perspective was a clear indication that the pathway was not really coming to study and just using that as a backdoor to work. So the problem was too many came within a very short period of time. They were pushing 950, 960, up to 1 million international students at both vocational and bachelor's, master's, doctoral level. The master's and doctoral level have now become the focus of Canadian international higher ed. Vocational has dropped off the radar. Very, very, very much not emphasized. The public-private partnerships that certainly allowed huge volumes to increase posed a lot of challenges in some of the bigger communities in Ontario and British Columbia and Quebec. Now we're seeing though there are still caps in place, reduced caps in terms of the number of new international students that can receive study permits every year. What's been clear the last 2 years, they haven't got close to hitting those caps because the numbers were even more deflated than they were originally hoping to have. So, but they are making exemptions for masters and above, that they are not subject to the new skills lists that they have that will limit vocational and bachelor's degree student graduates in terms of the potential jobs that they can get. With master's and doctoral students, they're not putting those limits on. So potential exists that there'll be a rebound. It's not happening anytime soon because a lot of the communities where these sudden spikes happened in the last 4 years are now dealing with the consequences of the reduced numbers. The institutions, there's an article that was in the newsletter this week about job losses that are coming as a result in 3 different provinces. The caps that have been put in place, there was an audit done that shows that the caps had a good effect in reducing the numbers, but the overall net effect on the higher education system has certainly been a negative one. So that's all we have for you this week on the Roundup. Thank you again for those who have been watching live, those who watch on repeat or subscribe through the audio-only podcast that's available on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, as well as Spotify. Thank you for making the Roundup part of your weekly international edification. Next time, we'll take a week off next week as I'll be in Brazil. But look forward to getting back with you towards the end of April, probably on the 22nd. So until then, do have a wonderful week, and we look forward to chatting with you next time. Cheers.